Right, it's Carl here from Games Brains A Head-Banging Life with another trip to our personal desert island where we'll be dropping off two people this time, both associated with the upcoming horror movie, The Unfamiliar, which we will of course get into as we go on. We have here director and co-writer Henk Pretorius and producer Llewelynn Greeff. Greeff, is that correct?
It. Yeah, it's Greeff, but Greeff is good enough.
Of course. Welsh, I presume?
Yes, Welsh name. Nobody in South Africa could spell it, and it's the first time when I moved to the UK that people could pronounce it.
Okay, fantastic. Of course, we're not actually staying on the island you are. We're leaving you two to your own devices. But to ensure you don't get too bored and potentially, I guess, kill each other, we had enough space on the boat for a few items. Those are 3 games of books, depending upon what your taste lies there, 3 horror movies and 3 records. I'll tell you now, everybody hates the latter, because if you're into music and you're trying to narrow it down to effectively your 3 favorite albums or EPs and so on, it seems to be impossible.
No,
Guys, first things first, how are you both doing?
I'm doing fantastic at the moment. I think it's quite a nice time actually to be creative and to concentrate on writing. So I've been enjoying it quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think lockdown has forced you to go back to the basics. So without sounding cheesy, but you sort of realize what's the point of anything again, getting up and just enjoying it. The thing I've been enjoying the most is going outside and not hearing planes and cars. I think that's what I've enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And yourself?
Oh, I haven't stopped working basically. My job
Good.
it was classed, day one was classed as a key worker's job. So my life didn't change. 5 days a week, out, it was exactly the same. Same with my wife, she's classed as a key worker. So
Brilliant.
other than the fact that I haven't seen my 17-year-old son in about 2 months, which obviously sucks.
Yeah.
But he's 17, so I don't know how much he actually gives a damn. Beyond that, yeah, it's been going okay, as it were. Yeah.
Okay.
So can we go into individually a little bit about yourselves? I'll start with you first, Henk. Perhaps your background and how you got into film, basically.
I was 24 years old and I looked back at my life and as a teenager and I decided to make a teen comedy. And it was the first teen comedy ever made in South Africa, and also one of the first Afrikaans trilogies. And it turned out to be a big success, and I kickstarted my career. And then I moved over to Fani Furislobola and Leading Lady. And then I met Llewelynn, and we actually made Leading Lady together. And I moved to Britain to start the process on The Unfamiliar. So that's my professional career. But I actually started as an actor in a soap opera, which is the weirdest start to a film career, I suppose. Yeah.
Would we know the show?
I don't think so. They actually made me jump off the roof. I think I enjoyed the party scene too much, and I got the script, and I was very happy about it because it had this effect in I'm going to jump off a roof, and I was very excited about it until they said, "Well, you've been written out."
Oh.
And I was like, and I was quite sad because I enjoyed the attention, to be honest. And then I jumped off the roof, and that was it for my character. You know?
Excellent. And yourself, Llewelynn?
I've always wanted to be in the career, but I came from a small town in South Africa where it wasn't regarded as a real career. So I went and did a real thing, and I studied computers and went into business and computers. Did that for a long time. And then in about 2009, 2010, I thought, no, I want to really change this up now. At that time, I'd already been living in the UK for a while. And then luckily, I went and I studied film at the Metropolitan Film School at Ealing Studios. And then I was thinking, I need to do this, but I want to do it with someone. I've always been a big believer in having fun with someone, sharing the success with someone, and also being in trouble with someone. And you're usually much braver with someone. So then she said, you should meet Henk. And obviously all of us coming from South Africa knew about Henk's success with the Buckhunt trilogy. And then through my missus, I met Henk, and we started Dark Matter Studios shortly after that. And since then we have built a company that we're extremely proud of that's based in the UK. Henk was in the US for 2 years, immersing himself in the industry there. I was in the UK. And then, we did our first film together, which was Leading Lady. Then we produced a film called Blood and Glory, which is like a war biopic drama. And now we've gone on to one of my favorite genres, which is horror. And now we've sort of caught ourselves in lockdown, marketing and competing with studios in a time where you wouldn't necessarily be able to compete in the way that we can.
Yeah, about that, obviously, so you've gone on lockdown, you've now got to promote and push out a movie that's due out in the next couple of months across the world and stuff like that. How on earth do you adapt to that? Is it a matter of you were taking it day by day and seeing what was happening?
I think it's quite a good thing for us, ironically, because people are in front of their computers and looking at social media. We do have a cinema release planned in the US with Vertical Entertainment, and then we're planning quite a wide release in the UK through Quantify, and then Lionsgate will do the digital for us. So we were planning quite a big footprint, but now we're in a space where if we get the support of people like yourself, we can actually compete against studio films as an independent company, because there's no massive footprint available to the studio films at the moment. So we're quite excited about that, and Dark Matter Studios, the company, is more of an independent, spirited company rather than a big studio with a massive amount of PR spending. And the cool thing is it operates in a creative way in a commercial space. And I think that really played to our advantage. Llewelynn is busy with the incredible marketing and distribution plan at the moment as well.
It's kind of, but I think it's a team effort, because very much like yourself, when lockdown happened with us, it was a matter of we now need to recalibrate, readjust, and we can't stop, because in fact content's going to be in a much higher demand than before. But what we really immediately recognized was that in the past, as independent filmmakers, to compete in the print and advertising space with getting big billboards and buses and tube station advertising, it's really, really tough. And with all the content out there, how do you break through the noise? And the one thing where Henk and I were very successful in previous films, and where Henk also did something unique in South Africa, was having a very intelligent marketing campaign, to engage the audience, because no matter what you do, no matter what you make, there is an audience for what you're doing out there. It's amazing how many niche audiences are out there. And it took us back to basics again. We were like, we now get to research the entire world of internet and audience and see, where do the horror fans sit? Where do horror fans live? Where do I live as a horror fan? Where does Henk live as a horror fan? And you find all these spaces, and you realize the amount of tropes and the variations in the genre. And what we love about the horror fans the most is that they're the horror fans. Like, they don't care if a reporter says something in Hollywood Reporter, like, no, you're not really a horror fan. We'll decide. Let us watch the horror. We'll tell you. And I quite like that. It's almost as independent spirited as what our company is.
It's interesting when you talk about like different aspects to approach PR on it and stuff like that, because from what I see and what I get, this isn't an area that I particularly know well beyond information that's come through us through the site. And often one of the things will be about getting out on VOD, get out on video on demand, get it out digitally and so on. But even that, though, surely runs the risk of you just being buried under a mountain of other releases. And for example, I think of one particular streaming service, I'll say Amazon Prime. And if you can get released on that, but you're just buried under what is a mountain of varying no budget releases and obviously high studio budget releases. How do you handle that?
For us, it's basically the algorithm gods, and the algorithms let you either through or not. Now, our platform that we are accessing is Lionsgate, so we're releasing through Lionsgate in the UK, and will be included in their slate of films going digital. And then Vertical Entertainment, which is an incredibly successful company and a robust VOD footprint in the States. They are doing it for us there, and then we're selling it across the world with Myriad Films, Scoundrel Media. So to answer your question, I think it is very important to partner with the right distribution company, and they need to be feeding good product to the VOD market to actually make a dent. And then pre-buying is so important to get your film to a place where people actually pre-buy your film, which then tells the algorithms, listen, this title is important, and you may get a banner. And the moment you get a banner, it means money, right? Or it means not money, it means your production budget can actually come back, in the reality of independent film.
And what you would have laughed at as well, Carl, is like when we were out making the film, it was really hardcore independent filmmaking where there's a lot of things you want to do, but there's very little budget. You still have to maintain the level of quality. It still has to be able to play on a cinema. So you've got all those variations and elements, and that's where Henk's really good, because we sort of have that balance on set where I'll be sort of, managing the fiscal vision, he's managing the creative vision, and we're sort of doing that together. But then you almost take that approach when you actually go and sell and meet people. It's the same thing, you're sitting in a room with a Lionsgate UK or a Filmfinity in South Africa or Myriad Pictures, and you got to fight for it. You got to convince them this is good, because let's be honest, a lot of people don't know what is good until they've actually seen it. So our business is so perception and perspective driven, and then you work so hard and you try and build up the courage to go to all these places, get it all done, and then in the end of the day, the audience is the true decider of whether it works or not. But it's just to get to that audience that's the challenge. Like you said, there's so much noise, and you're trying to get the loudest megaphone or the highest pedestal to stand on to shout to the audience that you can stand out in some kind of way. And that's the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. It does make sense. Right, we're going to get started with the first selection for the Desert Island Dregs. Games and or books. Are you doing one each? And then one of you taking the third one?
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, who would like to get us started then with their first choice?
Is this music or games?
Games
I think
or
games.
books?
I think you should start with games.
Yeah, I'll start with games. I'm going to go like old school when I was a kid, the stuff I grew up with, and I was a massive fan of Doom. When Doom came out in South Africa, that was insane, because not only did you only have a few friends with computers that had enough memory to actually play the game, then you had a friend who had an expansion pack or Doom Aliens version, and also being one of my favorite films, that was just insane. There was this game you were playing after school, and you still, the one-person shooter perspective, but then it's got lines out of the Aliens form and screams, and then you have alien monsters. So I don't know if you recall that, Carl, but like Doom was one of the first sort of, first-person shooter game that really swooped me up. Oh
yeah, absolutely. It's a game I grew up playing. Is it something you followed along through the years with sequels and the remakes and the reimaginings we have nowadays?
I did. I think I followed it all the way until about Doom Eternal, because obviously when Xbox and PlayStation came out, then there were more Doom versions that you could online, much easier, not sitting at a keyboard with a friend playing, so the usability became much easier. And then obviously it spun off. I think the developer was ID Software. They had quite a range of games. And then, I followed up to a point, and I know they made a movie, but the movie wasn't my favorite. I preferred the game, but yeah. So, but interesting game.
When you say the movie, do you mean the one from mid 2000s with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
They also last year they made another movie, a kind of low budget, more independent version of it.
That's
not
right.
Very good. I'm gonna say it's not very good. Okay, what's your next choice then?
Games for Henk, or
who are you alternating? Yeah.
No, he's doing games.
Okay. Yep. Carry on. Yep.
Oh, I do all the games. Oh, okay.
Then
another game that I've actually revived in the lockdown. I actually have two friends in Cape Town, and the one day we were chatting, and this is now, I've gone off of PC, I'm on Mac since 2004.
Okay.
And we were chatting and talking about like our varsity days when we study. We're like, who wants to play Half-Life? And now we haven't played Half-Life since back in the day. And that's how I got back onto the Steam engine. So I installed Steam on my machine, and we played Half-Life. So it's funny we didn't go to Doom yet, but we played Half-Life and just stayed on Half-Life. And I realized how amazingly well it's aged for me as a game, how the concept is quite universal, and how the range of people playing Half-Life now are kids that you'd think would only be playing Gears of War or things on Xbox. There were young kids who were like way better than me at Half-Life. I think it's embarrassing when I go on there. I think I should just call myself old man player, because I last for like 5 minutes and have to respawn. Eventually I have to tell my friends in Captain, can we team up and meet at the car in the parking lot and just try and get a few deaths, because so yeah, no, Half-Life was one that I sort of revived. And then the other one, which is not as hardcore shooter game, it's just more strategy, was I loved Age of Empires. It's actually a game that my wife and I played together. So because it's strategy and it takes much longer, it's a little bit violent, but not like, your Doom or your Gunner Tournament, but it's a bit of a longer lasting game. So I'd say those three are my favorites. If I was stuck on an island, I wouldn't mind having those in a big screen with an easy control.
Yeah. I mean, of course, with Age of Empires, you have your time sink there more than anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Right. So, The Unfamiliar. Who would one of you like to give me a brief synopsis of the movie?
Sure. It's basically about a British Marine that comes back from war thinking she's got PTSD, only to find a more sinister presence in her house. And it's not what you think, Carl. I saw your review about a trailer and ghosts in the trailer. I laughed so much, but
so it's funny.
It's got The Unfamiliar's got a few twists in it, yeah.
Right, I'm thinking, okay, I have done a reaction where I get a little bit frustrated sometimes with a certain thing, but I actually, funny enough, we'll talk a little bit further along about that. I got some questions surrounding it. But you're obviously dealing with a number of different things in this, based off the trailer from what I watched earlier on. Hawaiian mythology is obviously a major part of it. Can you give us some more insight into that?
Yeah, so the co-writer, Jennifer Nicole Stang, she brought this massive big book, and she said, listen, I have to tell you about this mythology. And she summarized it, thankfully. I had to read it at some point, but in the beginning she summarized it, and it was this very intellectual book about the breakdown of Hawaiian mythology and how a Magina is a faceless woman, and a Kaimoni is a very unique demon in Hawaii. And you have night marches, and there's a transference spell, and there's all these occults and stuff that they believe in. And I studied it and I looked at it, and she actually lived there for a bit as well. And, we try to keep as authentic as we possibly can to it in the horror genre, of course, but also to showcase that there's more to Hawaii than just a place that tourists go to, which I think is important.
Yeah, I think you certainly nailed that. I'll be honest, when I watched the trailer, I was like, Hawaiian mythology? Hawaii? Really? I mean, of course, you actually think, well, of course, there's got to be something there. But did you look into it? Is there anyone else who's ever done something around Hawaiian mythology? Because it certainly doesn't ring a bell to my ears.
I think the closest thing, it's not a horror, but The Rock, actually. He's not really from Hawaii, I think, but he identifies as a Hawaiian person, I think. And he did an animation about Hawaii, but it's more looking at the culture through that.
Moana.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
But the Hawaiian mythology that we tapped into, you can barely find on the internet.
Yeah. No, it was when we were researching, and that's what we thought was quite fresh, because Henk and I sat and we spoke about it, and like you said, there's a lot of things that is quite trite that gets done the entire time over and over, just packaging differently. And then the Hawaiian mythology, I remember that book that him and Jenny read when I went to them in LA. There was this book, and it looks like the kind of thing that your gran wouldn't like to see on your table. She'd be worried about you if she sees you reading books like that. It's not the Hawaii with the beautiful, big rocks and beaches and rainforests. But I think that's what I like, because I think every culture, no matter how amazing it looks, it always has that binary opposite, So you'd think if Hawaii is this colorful, then the equal opposite of its dark side must be even darker than the sort of semi-color culture. And it really was. And when Henk explored those characters and researching on the internet, finding what these mythological creatures looked like, was really, really tough. And there's only like just over 2,000 people in the world that still speak the true native tongue Hawaiian. Not a lot of people. So the chants that Henk uses in the film are also true Hawaiian chants. And yeah, it was quite a mission to get those as translator and make sure that we, I mean, the 2,000 Hawaiians, if they're watching on TV, we're not sure what he's saying, but we try to get as accurate as possible to know exactly what Henk was saying, to try and be as true to the culture as possible.
So you're aware, you kind of said during that you're aware that ultimately what is paranormal horror has been done to death to the point where it's, as you say, just a repackaged skin. So clearly you're very aware of that, and you were aware going into this. So does that mean you quite heavily trying to ensure you focus on the history of Hawaiian mythology, perhaps more than anything else?
Yeah, it wasn't really the focus or the reason why I brought in the Hawaiian mythology. Is to steer it away of basically a cliche. I think the way I told the story is where it's unique. It's actually a horror mystery. So everything you just said forms part of the film, but it's not all the pieces of the puzzle. It's a film that leaves you breadcrumbs all the way through the film, and you have to make sure that you see every single breadcrumb and you pay attention, and then it all will make sense in the end. I think another film or example is Desert Island, which did a similar concept. I actually watched it the other day, and the first time I really understood it. And it did a very similar thing in The Unfamiliar, where I think I see it as a horror mystery. So even though, yes, there might be paranormal activity going on, there is a Hawaiian mythology. That's actually not the thematic that holds the puzzle together.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's fascinating, because another aspect from the trailer that I guess is kind of clear is that you're also dealing with the difficult subject of the after effects of military service. That's always, well, as I said, a difficult subject to approach. When it came to that, how are you ensuring accuracy and, I guess to a point, respectfulness when it comes to portraying that?
I actually made friends with Marines while I was writing. It wasn't even intentional. And I mean, I made these friends, and they happened to be Marines, and I started hanging out with them. And in asking them about war, they said a lot of them have PTSD, but they just don't talk about it. It's not something they discuss. It makes them seem vulnerable. And they still some of my best friends. I mean, these guys are incredible. The camaraderie you have with them, and the connection I formed on a very quick, and also they don't judge me. I come from South Africa. They look at me as a person, they get to know me, because they're used to different cultures, if you think about it, because they travel all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what I mean? So they're used to getting to know, forming connection with foreigners, basically. And in these connections, they revealed quite a lot about me. And Jenny was also, she actually interviewed them like a clinical psychologist would, and asked them very endearing questions about, okay, well, if you have PTSD, would you tell your family? And in the film, she thinks she's got PTSD, but she doesn't really want to reveal it to anyone. And it's an inner thing. And I actually wanted to put a voice over at some point, because I was afraid the audience won't get it. And then in the test screenings, they really got it. And I was like, wow, it's incredible how audience, the collective intellect of audience these days, So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. It's just it's a difficult subject. You acknowledge that it's obviously a difficult subject to broach. You can do your history and research and stuff like that, but whether or not you can accurately portray it without it being, I guess, shoved in everyone's faces, where you've got warning signals going, oh, this is what's going on. That balance must be difficult.
Yeah, and I think Henk handled it well, because he handled it very subtly. It wasn't, sometimes when you handle a disease like that, or schizophrenia, or just anything, people sort of smash it on the nose the whole time, like, okay, it's obvious. And because it was part of the mystery and the horror, Henk had to handle it in a way that, like you said, the audience picked up on it, and we didn't have flashing cards the whole time with those having a t-shirt saying, I have PTSD, which made it really tough. And we also realized that PTSD, even though it's predominantly known as a form from war, but people have PTSD from childhood abuse, people have PTSD from, I mean, my missus and I had a son 4 or 5 months ago, and we met people in the war that had PTSD from birth, so it's funny how the variation in psychology of what PTSD is caused by. And I thought it was handled quite well, that people picked it up immediately, but knew it was a bit more than that, which was really nice to see.
Good. Now, obviously, you've said there's a lot more to it than just paranormal, but ultimately, when you watch the trailer, your average moviegoer is going to probably take that element out of it more than anything else. And it's been dominating the horror movie scene for quite some time now. What, in your eyes, makes The Unfamiliar stand out from the pack if someone was just judging it based off the paranormal side of things they get in the trailer?
I think it's the way the story is told, and I think that the way the story is conveyed, and also the idea that everything we've just said is not the thematic of the film. Again, the plot's different to what we're saying. So the twists are, there's quite a few twists in the tale, and it's also told through Izzy's perspective. So I never cut to a scare just for the sake of a scare. You watch Izzy go through life and trying to piece her. She's basically trying to see where she fits into her family again, and whether they are now strangers to her or not. And while she's figuring out whether she has changed or they have changed, she's also figuring out that she can't really tell them that she's got PTSD because she's a British Army doctor, so she's got that issue as well, to not seem too vulnerable. So there's quite a lot of subtext going on at the same time, and again, it's not really a PTSD film. So you got to carefully piece take all the puzzles to understand the whole. But again, on the trailer, and I agree with you, I think it's very, very difficult to cut a trailer. We cut 4 or 5 different trailers of this film.
Yeah.
And the trailer that you saw is the most commercial cut, and I'm quite proud of the way it presents the film. But it's not the true reflection of the film. There's a much slower cut of a trailer, and the film's not a slow burn, but there is a slower cut of the film that represents the tone better of the film. But that's too artistic to push into the VOD market.
That's a challenge we sit with, Carl, because like where Henk and I've watched all those versions, and every trailer is true to the film, but we've seen the film, we know the film, we've lived the film. And then you look at an audience perspective and they're going, okay, you're dealing with a distributor who, for example, knows their market really well. So you respect the knowledge they have of their market and say, well, this is going to steer more towards that. At the end of the day, the one thing we want it to be is true to the film. You don't want to lie to people, have a clown scare, and then there's not even clowns in the film. So you're trying to do something where you go, as long as it just gets them to watch it. Once they've watched it, they'll realize the trailer will actually have more meaning to them. They'll go, oh, okay, I see it. It's not that, but it makes sense why that's in the trailer. And that's what we try to do. And that's really what's difficult. And I think if you look at the marketing of films, it's always down to the trailer and the one sheet, like the poster, and then that, and then those are the things that most people back in the day before digital, that's how people sold things at markets. People would buy movies off the cover, or the trailer. So it's really tough because that is almost like still there, and you've got to compete with that. So you've got to have that commercial appeal a little bit there, where the sort of non-commercial filmmaker that's like the true indie, like the cult fan almost goes, oh, I'm intrigued, I need to watch it. It's the same challenge they had with the Babadook, for example. The Babadook, you watch the trailer, and when you watch the film, the trailer makes sense, but it's not what you thought when you watch the trailer. And that's what I quite liked about it.
Well, that's the excitement, and that's the joy of watching a film from a trailer. I'm not always the biggest fan of horror trailers, full stop. This is across the board.
Yeah.
As you kind of said, they're done in a way to sell, and that's fine. But it's often a really bad reflection of what is a great movie. Do you know the movie The Night Eats the World? It's based off the French title, called something else, Le Nuit, something like that. But it's called The Night Eats the World. It was released 2 years ago.
Make a note.
Make a note. The Night Eats the World.
Yeah. It's an independent in the zombie horror set in Paris, and the trailer for it, I absolutely hated. When it came to the movie, I thought it was the best thing that I had personally seen in the last 10 years of horror.
Wow.
So I completely understand what you're saying in regards to you've got to get the attention with a trailer, but it is not going to be potentially reflective of the overall product. And that's good to hear, really.
Yeah.
That you're aware of that.
I'm happy. Thanks for The Night Eats the World. I love that. I see the poster. It's like this. Yeah, I got to watch it. Actually.
Yeah, it really is. Really is a wonderful movie. So on the front, going back to the paranormal horror thing, that cycle is still alive. Now, from my perspective, I've always seen horror works in cycles, where a specific style is in vogue for a few years, be it zombies, be it the torture porn era with Saw and Hostel and stuff like that. And then the market gets oversaturated, people get tired, less money made and so on. Paranormal horror, it ain't going anywhere. We've been in this cycle now for over 10 odd years, really since the success of Paranormal Activity, really. Is that do you have any insight into why you think that might be the case? As to why audiences don't seem to be getting sick of it?
I think it's the thematic. I think we're in a space where this paranormal horror is something we really can't put under a lens, and you can't see it. It always changes. It's, you know, a zombie is a zombie. We know he runs and sometimes he walks. And sometimes,
these are the rules, exactly.
You know, we know the rules of a zombie. You know of Dracula, but Paranormal Activity and paranormal horrors, you literally don't know what's out there or if anything is out there. And so the power of the imagination is king. You know, you can go wherever you want. And I think it's the unknown in that regard. Yeah.
I agree with you, Henk. I think that fear of the unknown is interesting. Henk and I have been very lucky. We've met some iconic horror directors who've made some of the coolest paranormal films. But the big thing around it for us was, I've had this conversation, Henk, many times. We'll drive through like the middle part of America, and then, you know, I think because religion is quite active in certain parts of the world, a lot of people want to see that good will always overcome evil, kind of thing. You know, it's a funny thing. Like some people go, "Oh, no, I'm not going to watch that," but they want to know that the good guy wins, or holy water works, or, you know, whatever you're doing works. So you're absolutely right. You know, like so many of those trailers, and after watching your commentary, I watched that same trailer like without any volume, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, it's just it's a nice. So there's certain things that you pick up, but I think true to Henk's point, it's the one thing that no one can understand. That's why there's these documentaries on Mythbusters, like going to figure out, is this real or not? Like, because if we realize tomorrow that some of the stuff's real, then obviously it'll change the whole perspective. But because it's not really being proven, it's almost like these movies come out to try and prove you again and present you with another case of but it's always like inspired by true events, which is quite a vague inspiration for an event.
Yeah, I think a horror fan is very close to a paranormal horror fan is sometimes close to a religious film. You know, it's very close because you believe in the spiritual realm. So to me, it's like the question is, do you, Carl, believe in the spiritual realm? And maybe the irritation comes from not believing in it. You know, it could be. I know I'm very skeptical about it, and then I watched The Conjuring and I prayed for the first time, and I think maybe 37 years. You know, so it was quite strange. You know, that film did that to me.
Fascinating. Right. Okay. Horror movies then. Who's taking the lead in this one?
I'll go for it.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So for me, I love, which you might guess is, I love The Babadook. I thought that was an excellent film. I thought Jennifer Kent did really well to explore the thematic of grief in it, and the way she handled it. And also the all-consumingness of grief and what it means when you let it go or accept it, that you can actually live with it. Well, that's what I got from it, and it had quite an emotional resonance with me afterwards. And then I think my second choice would be Sinister.
Okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed the way the mystery unfold of what's Raghul, and the way that the mystery unfold and the occult happened in it, and also the way the film is really shot in darkness, and you can only see a little bit of it, and you never reveal too much of the monster until the end. So the breadcrumbs he left for us to figure out the story until the very, very end where we figure it out. I enjoyed that. And then I think the third one would be It Follows.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny, what I love about It Follows is the color palette and the way the soft lighting of the romantic way how he shot violence.
And the soundtrack was insane.
Yeah, it was amazing. You know, so we met the girl, and that was part of the company that made It Follows possible from a sales perspective. And just the guy, she explained the director's mind to us and how he thinks about stuff. And so I think David did a great job.
It's a fascinating list, all quite rooted in the more modern era of filmmaking as well. But obviously, you've already touched upon with your own movie, but clearly you've got quite a fascination with horror that leaves mystery, leaves thought, wants you to think about what you've seen or to work it out as you go along to either a big payoff or something that satisfies you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation. I think I have an overactivated mind that I sometimes try to instill, and it's not necessarily, it's quite difficult sometimes because I can't get it to switch off. And it doesn't mean it's intelligent, it just means it keeps on saying stuff to me all the time. And I think that films like those, they give my mind a puzzle to figure out, and I can keep going and thinking about it all the time. And it brings quite a satisfaction when I figure it out, and then I can go, oh, cool, I've achieved my goal of thinking today, now I can sleep. So I think that's why.
Yeah. And what's great about when we did those horror films, when we decided to make a horror film, myself and our fellow producer, Brrraaains Kruger, who also works at Dark Matter Studios with us, we took this box of horrors to Henk, and we were busy researching on horror, and it was like a box of horrors. So I had everything there from from Evil Dead all the way to Martyrs to, the range. And then you also realize how many tropes there are in the horror world and how fascinating the horror world is. So from a producing perspective, I'm always fascinated by it's the industry with the most profitable films ever made. It's got the most sequels, prequels, remakes. It's such a massive IP. If you compare it to every other genre, it's probably one of the biggest with the most depth out of everything. And if you just take like Evil Dead as an example on how Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell put that together and how that inspired so much other things. And again, what I like about that is that true independent spirit that those guys had to break those boundaries. And that's when, Henk was like, choosing your favorite horrors is like, it's like, having your favorite kid. And you probably have a favorite kid, but eventually you got to try and play fair to everyone else,
Yeah, completely. Particularly if you've grown up watching horror, it gets even harder, and you've been through the eras, be it a certain period and the rise and fall of certain things. I think it starts to confuse your mind and almost makes you desensitized to what you're even watching. Not necessarily what you're seeing, but more what's being told. Particularly if you're seeing the same stories being rehashed. Yes.
May I ask you a question? I'd love to know what your thoughts on The Shining versus Dr. Sleep.
So, I'm going to start off controversial already. I don't love Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. I don't. I admire it because for its obviously incredible filming style, how it was made. It's got iconic shots. It's so iconic. It's part of pop culture. But I don't love it. I don't love it because I don't really care for a lot of Stephen King's works. And even though the book is quite different, I never really got along with it in the same way. My wife loves the movie, so it's one of those that I have to watch more often than I'd like. However, I literally watched Dr. Sleep 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago I watched Dr. Sleep, and I'd kind of put it off because I was like, I don't really want a sequel to The Shining, let alone a sequel to Kubrick's The Shining.
Yeah.
But I must say, I really, really liked Dr. Sleep. I thought it was really, really well done, well acted, really lovely to look at. And obviously, without going into spoilers for people who are watching, the latter parts of that movie, it was fascinating. It was like wanting to pause constantly and go, oh, is that accurate? Have they done that right? And so on. And I must say, and it kind of almost gave me a new reappreciation for Kubrick's work and wanting to go back and rewatch it again and go, okay, am I just being a pedantic git? And is it actually really the work of a genius?
Wow, that's quite a story. No, it just fascinates me.
Did you like it then? Is that
I thought it's two way different films. I thought they actually two films in two different genres. The one was fantasy horror to me, Dr. Sleep, a little bit more fantasy horror. And then the other one was, I loved The Shining. But I had the same problem in the beginning, but I liked the way they linked it from a plot point of view, where it was the little kid and he's The Shining and he sees stuff and he can see the ghosts and whatnot. I really enjoyed that part. And then I haven't finished Doctor Sleep yet. So I'm about 50 minutes in, and so far I'm really enjoying it. It feels like a different film, but I'm really enjoying it for what it is. But yeah, it is difficult for me to understand the two in the same context.
I always like to, when you end up with a major star, a major actor or whatever in a role, and it's someone you've seen. So Ewan McGregor, well, I've seen him in so many different movies, from his early days of Trainspotting up to Star Wars and so on. My sign of what I consider a good performance, and particularly in Dr. Sleep, is when I forget all of that.
Yes.
And it's like, oh no, this is now the character he's playing is, I believe it. I'm not seeing Obi-Wan Kenobi, or I'm not seeing one of his other movies and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Wow.
Exactly.
Right, Henk, you did comedies before this, and you gathered it wasn't an easy ride. Then going, okay, I've done comedies, I'm now going to do horror. Llewelynn, you said you gave Henk a load of horror movies to research and watch.
I actually ended up in hospital when I was watching this. I got an abscess over here, and it just grew, and my mouth was, and I was watching these horrors, and my girlfriend at the time thought I was possessed. So it wasn't easy at all. It was a very difficult thing, and I had to like really understand why people watch scary films until I started loving it. And I figure it's because when you watch horror, you're searching for the truth and you're facing your demons. And I think it's quite a brave thing to do, to self-actualize in that way. And that's kind of when it clicked. And then I really started enjoying it. And then I started seeing the layers and everything. But before then, it just petrified me. But the timing is very similar of horror and comedy, where you get your offbeat comedies where you've got setup, punchline, or setup, punchline, or, and with horror, you've got a setup, scare, or setup, no scare, or and so forth. So on a perfectly sort of almost a composition point of view, a musical composition point of view, it's very similar. So that really intrigued me. And then thematically, story to me, film is film to me thematically. But watching a horror with a test screening audience was awful, because they walk out and the people are so scared, they don't want to hug you. They don't want to interact. I do comedies, they come after me, they think I'm the nicest guy in the world. They hug me and they take me to their family dinner. This time they don't want to introduce me to anyone. they think I'm a dark person with a dark mind, So that part was weird, and I think that will escalate.
Yeah, and I think what was funny about that was, at the time when Henk and I were now packaging the film, because, we do everything together. So we get the finance, we try to get distribution, and then when I put on, so I'm in the room without Henk, I'm sitting, the director says to the distributor, and they're like, yeah, but he's only done comedies. And already at that time, Henk had deciphered already. It's like, yes, but it's almost like comedy and horror, they're the upside down world of each other. The one builds up to this extreme emotion, the other one builds up to that extreme emotion. And they just didn't understand that. And I was trying to explain to them how some of the greatest directors have done both, like they've done horror, and then they've done fantasy, and then they've done comedy. The big guys, even Peter Jackson, when he did, Brain Dead, which is like a prosthetics, dream. And I remember going to Weta Studios the first time seeing that. They're making all these other films, and then people didn't even know that he made Frighteners, for example, which is like almost like a paranormal horror, which was very comedic for me. And then I thought, but it's funny how people mistakenly, they try and pigeonhole you, going, oh, Henk has done drama and comedy, and I'm like, oh, but he's a filmmaker. A filmmaker should be able to delve and understand any medium, just like when we produce or when we market a film, you're marketing to a different audience. And just to add to that, I think what we loved about horror is I always saw horror as the one medium that could challenge the status quo, and people forgave it by going, oh, it's the horror genre. If you look at the early days of when the world was quite dogmatic and religious, like The Omen and The Exorcist, if you had a drama doing that, it would be banned. But if it's a horror doing that, they're like, oh, okay, but it's a horror. So it felt like horror was the mechanism or the medium where people could go and say things they wanted to say, because if I say it in a comedy or in a drama, then it's not going to see the time of day. And I think that beautiful masking has allowed a lot of interesting theories and voices to come through.
Wonderfully put. It's interesting you say about how horror was used as a medium to either get across a point or say something that could be said everywhere else and it would be okay. Obviously, then we hit the 80s and it became not okay.
Yeah.
And now I feel like
exactly
we've gone the complete opposite, like furthest way possible in horror, where it's almost impossible to come up with anything new to say that isn't
correct
in every other medium.
Exactly, it's a challenge.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So one of the other things I took away from the trailer, at least from my eyes, was that there doesn't look like you've really employed a lot of CGI in The Unfamiliar. You've gone for practical effects, be it makeup, be it that side of things. I'm going to take it you did that on the basis that you consider practical effects either a better scare tactic than, say, CGI?
It's the thing about practical effects, it's your footage it ages better. So, if you go and look at even Avatar on a 4K or 8K screen, you see the CGI. And that's an incredible film. When I watched it in 3D, I was blown away by it. But and then I watched it the other day on I think it was an 8K screen, if that's possible. Sort of shop window, it wasn't mine. And I looked at it and I was like, what is this? So that's what we try to attempt to do. And it's the visual effects are quite invisible in The Unfamiliar, we hope. And we did do about 80, I think it was about 80 frames in the end. And we did it with an incredible company to make sure that they are perfect and, spend enough time on it. But the vast majority is in camera effects, yeah.
And also, when you have that in-camera effect on set, it doesn't mean things can't go wrong. Because you have special effects, you literally have to make the thing. And if the thing doesn't work or the mechanism doesn't work, it's either you can go, we'll just go fix it with VFX. It's like, no, because it's going to A, cost a fortune, and B, it's not going to look as good. Because some of the greatest films we've seen, I've always seen is the hybrid approach, where you almost have like 80% in camera and the 20% VFX is just to really tweak it. But if you go to a higher refresh rate screen, it doesn't take the element away, the process. So Henk got this great makeup artist. She worked with Harry Potter films before. She was really good with prosthetics. So really like creature prosthetics and scars and wounds, and it makes such a difference, because once it's there, it's locked in. And then the VFX, or even with grade, if it's very good in-camera effects. Henk was sitting there the one day I was watching him in the colorist do certain things to the prosthetics just with grade, not even VFX. Yeah. So from an independent perspective, from a cost perspective, if you really thought it out and you've drawn it out nicely, and you can actually see that practical effect come to life, then it's much easier, and you can only actually enhance it. Whereas sometimes if you have to rebuild the whole thing, it's either going to cost you most of your money, or it's just not going to fit the rest of the film, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that we started with saying about dating a movie and aging and stuff like that, because my mind instantly goes, okay, what I was thinking while you were talking, thinking, right, what's arguably, I wonder what you would think is the most iconic use of practical effects in horror that you've ever seen?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. The stuff that I really enjoyed. I mean, I loved the Babadook. The practical effects in the Babadook was good, but it wasn't all over the show. There wasn't so many of them. I'm trying to think of all the Exorcist had some, but I can't remember I can't remember the balance. It's good. My mind.
You actually, I don't know if you remember, but you and I were still watching that one scene together. We actually watched two scenes together when we were researching. We watched The Exorcist, obviously the pea soup, everyone knows that, but there was that one scene where they had like 3 guys standing on the side, and then when all the plates and everything was flying to the window, but the camera was just pointing, it's just guys throwing things at the window. But immediately you got the girl and it's looking, and we actually, Henk then did something like that in the film where there was a scene with Tommy where there's a certain thing that needs to move. I'm climbing in literally behind this big cabinet, and then I'm pushing the cabinet, and they'll probably board rails and pulleys to do all that, and I'm just pushing the cabinet, the kid's pushing the cabinet. And those practical effects are priceless. And you mentioned the Babadook, because I think that scene you showed me behind the scenes was where, when I think he stabs her in the leg with a knife.
Yes.
And usually those are like, trick blades, but it was literally they took a piece of meat, because also low budget film, the guys, when they got a nice piece of meat, put it in the fabric of the mom's leg. And that's why they could go in on the camera and it could look like knife going into meat.
Yeah.
And that was just a practical effect. So from all the way from the 70s with, William Friedkin's masterpiece all the way to Babadook. So practical effects, I think, are still nailing the day.
And the thing is, like, doing stuff in reverse. It's so silly. You don't think about it, but if you put your hand over here and you go like this, and you just reverse it, looks like that. So it's and that technique will save you thousands. So, just a silly thing like thinking about something in reverse. And I remember watching actually James Wan's work a lot, and the way he used practical effects in The Conjuring 2. And I mean, he's got money to do stuff, but he threw dishes around, he made people go up and down with
cables.
It was absolutely amazing what he did, and but I have to say, like, the actors are really brave to go through those things. It's like we were pulling actors underneath in an aqua tank.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were so brave to do it because, I mean, obviously it's safe and we've got all the safety in place and all that, but still it's petrifying. It's a horror film. It's that sinister thing all the way through, and they're doing whatever it takes. It's amazing.
No, that does make sense as well. I'd love to. I've never ever been near a set in my life, and it always conjures up, as you say, images of darkness and miserableness and unhappiness because of the work that's being put in. So it's good to hear that it's being enjoyable. And you talked about cost effectiveness of, say, effects and stuff like that. Do you think it's easier to make a profit when it comes to making even an independent horror movie? Because I guess potentially a lower budget obviously makes things slightly easier when you're not trying to recoup millions. But rarely do we get horror movies with budgets, even high studio ones. We're not talking Avengers style budgets here. Even if it's something like, I don't know, the recent It, which has at least a fair bit of money behind it. And you said about it being a profitable genre now, but on the independent side of things, that's not quite as easy as you said about marketing and so on. So do you think it's going to be easy to kind of basically make a profit?
I think it's never, and Henk will jump in as well. I think the assumption of any young filmmaker, whether it's a director, producer, whatever they do, the assumption of it's easy to make money back is the worst assumption you can make. In an industry where everyone has access to a digital camera now, everyone can write a story. It's so difficult. When every time Henk and I sit and think about a film, Henk has this amazing ability to look at what the audience is talking about, what will work. Because first of all, you got to first find the audience that's going to watch this. Then you sort of reverse engineer it back. And there's so many elements to go through this. And we're finding it now. We shot this film, May was 2 years ago that we wrapped. And we had to do, all the effects, do all that. Then we had to find distributors that would partner with us or would sell it, because we have all private investors, so we have a duty of care to them, because we want to be that company and those filmmakers that make the money back, that are responsible with the money, that don't just promise a selfie on a red carpet. Like this is, you've chosen to put your money into this instead of timber or instead of, renewable energy. So you're aware that it's a high risk or higher risk than most things, but we're going to do everything we can to make it back. And I think, it's amazingly creative when Henk writes a story, but creativity actually carries on straight throughout. Like if I just look at what we've been doing with this marketing campaign, I promise you, dude, like Henk and I, you're talking about long days, we're doing 12, 14 hours, and it actually makes me think of The Sinister. I sit here late at night, a lot of time at home alone here, and it's dark in this house, and then I'm looking at the wall, and sinister things always happen when he's like working late at night. And obviously we're not working on comedy. I'm like, we look at these images of Tommy and this and that, and like it starts playing in your mind, and we're like, yes, it's a great idea for marketing, but let me go watch an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm just to wash my palate from the horror. But to answer your question, it's never easy, and there's no such thing in my opinion as a sleeper hit. Like things that do well, we're lucky enough to hit all those marks. There was a good story, it found an audience, and the filmmakers could reach their audience. And I think right now it's such a challenge, and Henk hit the nail on the head, these algorithmic gods. When we advertised a film 7 years ago on Facebook versus now, all the rules have changed. But I do believe that you need to be true to your audience, like you're true to your investors, like you're true to your crew. You've got to be honest, be transparent. You got to just show that everyone's working hard and everybody is doing whatever it takes to entertain the audience. And if we can entertain the audience, great. If we can entertain a little bit of audience, great. But there's no guarantees. You know, we don't have these big budgets, but we give it everything we've got. So when we've given it everything on set, we'll give it even more when we market the film, because a film without a good audience or a good marketing campaign, I believe, shouldn't always be made, because then you're putting out a lot of money to do something that you're not putting effort into. So it's very, very important for us, for people to understand how difficult it is.
It's good to understand that, and it's interesting you say about sleeper hits. I always find with the movies that went on to become majorly successful, no one expected it or even thought they would even get close to that at the start. You know, you talk about like the likes of the Blair Witch or Paranormal Activity and things like that. They were made in low budgets, were talked about, and then went on to become iconic.
Millions.
Yeah. But a lot of that seems to have come down to marketing when it came to that, you know?
Absolutely. You know, the Paranormal Activity, we actually know Aaron Pelly, and he was kind enough to take us for lunch before we made
really cool guy, such a cool guy.
And yeah, he's a lovely guy, and he said to us, he gave us the lay of the land and how it happened, and he was doing it in San Diego, the film actually, and
that's right.
And then after he shot it, Jason Blum said, listen, I'll make this a hit. And it was a combination of marketing brilliance and then obviously the film was incredibly scary for the time. It was phenomenally scary, and it very fresh, to your point. I think that exactly what you said. It started the paranormal movement in a way. And then Jason said, well, why don't we do a trailer where we watch audiences respond to the film? And genius, because the film looked. It's like a small film. The film cost $20,000, and then I added some scenes which cost a little bit more. But you know, it was a small film. But if it didn't have it wasn't Paramount behind them, and with a good marketing budget, nobody would know about it. You know, and that's the thing. So I have an enormous respect for, number one, the audience. I think the audience is incredibly intelligent. I love the horror family idea. I'm like writing philosophy about it. I like the idea of the family in this stage. I love it. And I have huge respect for it. And I had to analyze and think and indulge in what would they like. And I hope I have satisfied. And then secondly, I have enormous respect for the business behind it, which is Llewelynn, and everything that goes into the planning of the marketing campaign, the distribution, and how to reach your audience. And the balance between those two, I think, is where the industry is at for independent filmmaking.
So do you find when you were making this movie in particular that it took a toll on either of your mental health, the intensity of it? Did it kind of cause any issues and how it made you feel? You talked about sitting there late at night and freaking yourself out, but anything like more than that, really? Because it's something I think people overlook almost, that if you're constantly in that world, working and stuff like that, it could be quite... a toll.
I'm going to say one thing now, because, and I'm not making this up, it's going to look so staged, but we were obviously preparing for this interview today, and I was going through your website, looking at, and I loved your reviews, by the way, and absolutely Halloween 10 out of 10. I mean, that was, but anyway, so I was going through all of that, and I don't know why. It's because I was occupying my mind with it that much, and then Henk and I were working till late last night again, I think till like 11:30 time here in South Africa, and it was 10:30 on these viral campaign plans and things that we want to do. And the one is about a creature in the film, and I promise you, it's all I dreamt about. I was dreaming about going to the kitchen.
No, you never.
Promise you did.
I swear, dude. I swear.
I promise you did. I kept dreaming about it.
The Kaimoni.
Dude, and then she's sitting in the corner, and then I'm going to the bathroom. I'm like, you know, when you're like, am I awake or am I still asleep? Or you wake up in your dream. You know, you're like, when you wake up, I'm awake now, but you're actually still in your dream.
Yep.
And I was having that. And this morning at like 5 o'clock, I said to my missus, because our son started crying, I'm like, don't worry, I'm going to go take him for a walk. I literally just have to. So to answer your question, you know, it's amazing when you commit it or you're focusing on something in your head, it spilled over into my dreams. I promise you. I was wanting to tell you this morning, Henk, the whole night I was having nightmares. I'm like, let's just do this interview.
I had that when I was shooting the film. I was like, this Kaimoni demon was at my bed, and it looked at me like this, and the one time it was pushing me, and I almost like said, like, maybe there's something telling me I shouldn't make this film. You know, I was like, maybe this film shouldn't be made. I mean, I was superstitious in that way because you don't know, you know. And a couple of odd things happened. We were in the television just a couple of days ago, and they inserted this clip, and they actually inserted the clip on the wrong place in the film. So it was like transference was happening on the television, on the actual news, you know, and it was so odd because I will send you. I'll send you the clip.
Everything went haywire. Like the cut back. Like I was speaking and then I froze. Then it goes back to the journalist, and in an earpiece is like cut. And it was this panic, and I'm going, this has never happened to us before. Why is everything on the studio falling apart? They're getting the whole thing wrong. But it looks so. It
looks staged. Yeah.
It looks staged. But I mean, it's a news channel. They're not going to do that for us.
No.
We'd be grateful.
There are, throughout all of history and horror, there are stories you hear all the time of bad productions going wrong and things happening and bigger issues that have led to being called cursed. I think Poltergeist is an example of a film that's said to be cursed based off the issues, you know?
Yeah, the whole series was cursed, and they were like, we should never have made the film. And and then you wonder, is it marketing or is it not? But it's there, so you don't want to delve too deep into it, you know.
Of course. And I guess the bigger question on that front then as well is, so that's you guys and that's the crew and all that. Now we talked about the audiences and a modern audience that to a degree is desensitized to horror. Do you still think it's possible to shock and scare people?
Yes, it's a good question. Eh? I think like if you get people to become anxious and you make them vulnerable and you have emotional in, you can disturb them. And I think to an extent that's what we aim to do with the unfamiliar. I mean, it's an awful thing to say, to disturb people, but it's a way of entering them through their heart first, so that their vulnerability gets exposed, and then entering it. And that is what the unfamiliar does. So it's a story about a British Army doctor coming back from war. You know, it's beautiful, almost cheesy, beautiful music. And the way she interacts with her family, you really want her to succeed. And that's where the horror element comes in. But it happens in your head. It's a horror of the imagination. It's not. But I can't literally show you a monster you haven't seen. And if I show you something you haven't seen, you'll see the CGI in it. But I can make you watch something to a point where you start imagining what you're going to see. And I think that's scary. And that was my main goal, really, in showing the horror in the unfamiliar. Not showing.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that. I'm a big fan of what's it called, Tell Don't Show. The other way.
John Carpenter, like Halloween. You know, it's. I think that he's the master of that. And I only watched Halloween the other day, and then I was like, because I loved his work. The Thing. I mean, I love The Thing. And I liked his work, but I didn't understand it. Now I really get it, you know. And I was like, wow, he did this first, you know. I'm like, oh. But anyway,
Brilliant.
What a film.
Brilliant.
Right, gents, your music choices then. With last part, your music. Who is taking the lead in this one?
Llewelyn will.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we can split it. We can piecemeal. But so it's really tough. I mean, you know, there are so many good metal bands. But I had to take one that I think was sentimental to me, and it's the first metal band I was introduced to at the age of 5 or 6 against my mom's wishes. But my dad is a huge Black Sabbath fan.
Okay.
So obviously he had these LPs, and he used to hide the one LP cover from me. I don't know if you remember that famous LP cover where it was the dead rising, killing the living, and like just, you know, carting them off. It was a special edition cover. I think it was after the Paranoid album in 1970. And my dad was always like, and also in South Africa, you know, very conservative country when I was a kid, so the word Black Sabbath, like Black Sunday, like, ooh, you know, so it was also taboo. My dad used to hide it behind my mom's Boney M CDs, LPs. So then he'd give it to me. And then my aunt in America got me a little Fisher Price LP player. And then my dad bought me my first little 7-inch, and it was of Paranoid from Black Sabbath. So that was great. So I grew up with, loving Black Sabbath, loving that kind of music. And then the flip was when I actually got to watch Black Sabbath live in London. When I immigrated to the UK, it was amazing because I've seen the craziest bands there, from Opeth to, Lamb of God, Slayer, like some of the heaviest stuff, all the way through to some of the coolest stuff. So Black Sabbath for me, great band, iconic. Ozzy Osbourne, Prince of Darkness. He's got all these different names, all these like conspiracy theories of biting bats' heads off, doves' heads off, and this and that. So he himself, and then I think he did the full circle, the reality show on him and his life. You're like, oh, it's just an old dude that's annoyed with his family, and you go, oh, hang on, he's like this rocker. But I thought they were iconic. I thought they were pioneers. And then obviously more recent, I loved foreign metal. I mean, Sweden created great foreign metal bands, but I'd say Rammstein in Germany were one of my favorites growing up as a first sort of foreign band. I think their shows were iconic. It was big Germans, and whether they're singing about the sun coming up or baking a cupcake, it just sounded terrible. Like, you're like, oh, that's amazing. So, but I loved it, and I loved the lyrics as well. And then lastly, and that was maybe the rebel in me when I was a teenager and a little bit of the anti-establishment, was Rage Against the Machine.
Okay.
So I'd say those three. I mean, it's, again, Carl, it's really hard. We can talk for hours about bands and why and what, but so I'd say Black Sabbath, Rammstein, and Rage Against the Machine. I thought it was a nice little mix and covers about 50 years of metal,
It's varied as well. People love to say, oh, metal is metal, but it's kind of like, well, they're three metal bands who are very, very different.
Exactly.
And genre breaking, genre blending.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Glad you see that. Which one of those are your favorite? If you had to choose out of Black Sabbath, Rammstein, and Rage, which one?
Rammstein.
Nice.
They're
Favorite album? What was your favorite album of theirs?
I'm terrible at the pronunciations. Libra ist, that one.
Yes, exactly. That was good. But later on, they did Rosenrot, which a lot of critics didn't like, but I thought it was a good album.
I really like the album. There's just one song I don't like in it. It's Te Queda de Pu, the Mexican-themed one.
Yeah.
I don't like that. But, they're all bands.
Good choice.
Yeah, they're all fantastic bands. So back to the movie. Well, back to the trailer, should I say. Could you explain the rationale behind the trailer? So you talked about it being cut and how many different variations there are. But it's obviously very important not to show too much in one, and that's something a lot of films are guilty of. Do you think you got the balance right with what you've released?
I think it asks a question, what is this? Seeing your review of the other trailer, I think the question was asked just enough, so you're still interested in to know, am I right? and that gives me hope. But it's a very difficult question to answer because we obviously, as much as we try to be objective, we are subjectively involved with it. So what did you think?
What did I think of the trailer?
Yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I mean, I already have. I would say if you watch some of the videos on our YouTube channel and you see an opinion on one thing, that often is not necessarily going to be the final product. I'll give you the best example I can. One of the latest reactions I did was for a movie called a trailer for The Candy Witch. And I very heavily disliked that trailer. I was very critical, enough so that the production company kind of came after and had some words to say to me, which was a bit of a like, whoa. Regardless, I actually watched that film 3 or 4 days ago. And just because I didn't like the trailer, you go and or you think, oh, it's going to be this style and so on. The idea is everything deserves a chance, and everything is, our view on the site is everything is great until it proves it's not the other way around. We're expecting greatness, and if you make mistakes or things don't go on, then that's where our issues come from.
Yes.
I ended up really enjoying that movie. So when I watched your trailer, my thoughts are, okay, it's paranormal horror.
Yes.
Not a big fan of that at the moment and so on. But the elements I took away from it, and now that you've elaborated more on it as well, from the idea that we're going to be focused on certain elements. Once I gleaned the Hawaiian mythology, that's where my intrigue comes from. It means there's something there as well that I haven't seen.
Yes.
And that's exciting. All I personally want to be, is excited. It doesn't necessarily mean you've got to make the next Halloween or whatever, and it's got to be a 10 out of 10 movie or anything like that. That's beside the point. if you're doing something that is going to be exciting, and don't just mean that it's bam, bam, bam on the screen, but that my thought process goes in a direction where I'm like, afterwards I'm thinking about it, or I'm saying to my wife, hey, I checked out this movie, or I mentioned it to a friend or brother and stuff like that. That's what I'm after, and that's what I got from your trailer.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
You're also welcome to join us on set if you want, when this whole lockdown lifts. So we'll officially invite you, but we are shooting a new film. So if that's something you would like to experience, you're welcome on set.
I always get, you may not know this, but may not get this, but this is all incredibly nerve-wracking stuff for me. We've been doing this for years, but we never want to take it for granted or things like that. Who we're talking to, whether you respect people in industry and stuff like that. Thank you very much. It's very, very kind.
Okay, we'll make a point of
awesome.
it.
Yeah.
So I've got a few more questions for you. We're going to move to score now. Now, obviously, it's an important aspect of horror. When you think of things like The Exorcist, The Shining, you think of the music as much as anything else. They're ingrained in pop culture. Was this something you were particularly familiar with when you were going in, or not familiar, should I say, aware of when you were going into this?
And in terms of the music in the film, the score?
Yeah, like getting that right. You were thinking, okay, we must have this correct for this scene and so on.
I had one of the most incredible score writers, Walter Mia. He's an absolute genius in music. He actually got Hawaiian instruments. He bought them and he learned how to play them, and he used them as layers. And then he put them through all these, like, I can't remember the exact name of these. It's like old computer stuff. You probably know what it is. And he played with these sounds, and he made all these layers in music come together. And then at some point, he was so inspired because of the soundscape of the film, he actually, in his own money that we paid him for the score writing, he used to commission an orchestra to do a final track for us. And Walter Mia is an incredibly successful composer, but out of his own, he just he took it upon himself because he was inspired about the film and what he did with it. And then he did this for us, and it was incredible, because now you've got 30 people playing the music he wrote, and you're watching your visuals on screen while they're doing it. And I was blown away. I was like, it was one of the most special days in making this film. So the brilliance, I think the score is brilliant, but I can't take much credit of that. I think what Walter did was phenomenal, and the way he used instruments in unique ways. I mean, to be quite crass, he took a dildo and he put it on a
vibrator.
A vibrating dildo, and the dildo went down like this. And that's a scene in the film. There's this vibrating dildo sound, and he used this sound obviously, and he did some work with it. And then that is a scary sound. Who would know?
No, absolutely. That's incredible that you can get effects and sounds from it. I've seen clips of that where it's been explained how sound directors and music and orchestras and stuff like that create certain effects, and it's the crunch of this bone just happens to be ripped up celery or something like that. And it's always fascinating.
Yeah.
But just to quickly add to that, what was really nice, and just to endorse Henk's point about how committed Walter was, is he's one of those guys that you meet to the independent scene that is very talented. He knows everything, but you'd never say that. Some people have a sort of ego around them. I'm friends with this guy and I do this. With him, he's so unassuming. And when you start seeing his genius, and when he sat with Henk and did these things, I mean, they just sent me a clip. All I got a clip was of this big bass cello with a pink vibrator. I'm going, what's this? I'm on my WhatsApp. I'm like, I'm sure it's very cool, but I'll check it just now. I don't know if it's one of those videos your mate sent you that you let your mom swipe it. Don't swipe the other way, mom. Just watch the video. And then and I listened to it, and it's just, and actually it'll be a test for you. You can maybe when you've watched The Unfamiliar, tell us where you heard this cello. But the sound that it brings out, and the way he then put a microphone inside the box and outside, and the way he reverses sounds, and what was really amazing, like Henk said, now as independent filmmakers, any composer would love to have an orchestra to do everything. That's the ultimate. But we didn't have that kind of budget, and then him and Warren Kruger, the other producer, sat, and Warren's also very much into music, and then he said, well, there's this, I think I'm speaking of correction, but it's an orchestra in Macedonia, called Fames. And he said, no, but they'll go in, they'll do this. And it just shows you when you're so independent, where you go, you might not get the London Symphony Orchestra because they're going to cost you more than the budget, but there are equally talented string musicians in other countries all over the world that are willing to go do a scene for you, and it might be a better cost.
Yeah.
Because music is universal, whether it was strings in Macedonia or London or Ghana, it's talented musicians, and he did that. And I think you were with him, Henk, in his office, because again, it's independent. We're going to fly there and afford to go there. So he composed them through Skype. They spoke back to him, the whole thing, but it still comes across as this beautiful score piece in the film, So, and I thought that was quite cool, and that I love about the independent filmmaking spirit, where when you don't have copious amounts of budget, it forces you to be more creative than when you have a lot of money.
Absolutely. And obviously those sound effects, however they're made, or musical scores or musical moments, are heavily impactful on tension built moments, whether we're leading up to a particular scare or you're just trying to ratchet up that feeling of uncomfortableness. It's something, if I'm honest, I think is lacking in modern horror. Do you think you've got a really good balance of that done correctly on the Unfamiliar?
I think it's a combination. You're asking how the score and the sound design and the final mix came together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when it's put up alongside your tension building moments designed to make people uncomfortable, do you find it fits, and do you think you got the balance right?
I think it's in the silences that you have to play to silences. Mm-hmm. You can't scare people with music. It's the weirdest thing. You can unsettle them, but you can't scare them. So it's about the creaks of the house. Yeah. It's about walking. It's about the stuff that you don't hear. Sometimes you hear a little bit of wind, sometimes you don't. And then sometimes you hear the score coming in, but it's maybe, it's not music, it's just a droning sound. And then it goes away. And when it goes away, maybe something happens, maybe something doesn't. So it's like you have to see a horror as the whole thing is music, but it's in the silences that you build tension, I think. Whereas a lot of horrors have too much music and they try to scare audiences with music or sound design or sound effects, which totally has a part in it. More sound design has got a part in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we took away a lot of the music in final mix, especially in there's a specific moment in the film that you'll see that everything disappears, and it's because everything is not there that it feels eerie. Even the atmos is gone. You can't hear the woman walking on the ground. And because all those things are gone, you're building tension, and your ears say something is wrong. So it's a combination of final mix, sound design, and score coming together in a way that tells the story the best without being too insecure about always keeping the audience tense with music, I would say.
Considering, as you said, this has been wrapped up filming over 2 years ago, for both of you, do you still think you're as passionate about the project now as you were perhaps 2 years ago? Because it's quite a while and a lot of work still to go.
You know what happens is, I think Baz Luhrmann said it best, when you look back in your photos and you look better than you think you look now. So, you take a photo of us now, and we look like, and we think, maybe I can lose a little bit of weight. Maybe if I had more hair, And then 10 years later, I have less hair and I have put on more weight. And I look back at this photo. And it's similar to that, where I went through such a self-actualization process with making this horror. You're always insecure when you're making something, especially when you're operating outside of your comfort zone. That I was so hard on myself and I was so intensely involved with it. And now I look at it and I can't tell you how the audience is going to respond to it because it's far off my comfort zone. But one thing I can tell you is I'm incredibly proud of it. Yes. And I see it for what it is, and I love it for what it is. And no one's opinion could make me less love it. But I'm not in love with it. I don't think I'm the best filmmaker. I don't think I've got lots to learn. I've got things to still achieve, and it takes, I think, a lifetime to become a real filmmaker. But I do love it, and that won't change.
No, and I couldn't agree more with what Henk said. We actually, it's a great question, Cole, because we always say that, because you can imagine how many times Henk sits in a cut and then I'll sit in a screening and we watch it and we cut. So it almost takes the magic of what we achieved away sometimes, because you look at it so clinically. But I think that's the beautiful thing about being as committed as, on your marketing campaign, because I think a lot of mistake young producers and filmmakers make is they make the film, they sell it to distributor and go, oh, my job's done, hope for the best. Where with us, we are so involved that it's almost like redoing the film now. We go through everything and go, oh, this is an interesting marketing thing, and this is what Henk's got planned for Twitter and all those things. Then you realize what a privilege it is to be doing what we're doing, to be able to make films, to be able to go out there and put your product out there. And yes, there's going to be people that hate it, there's going to be people that love it, there's going to be people that'll never see it their entire life, but it's still such a privilege to be able to do that and wake up every day, no matter how stressful, and go, wow, we get to do this for our life. We get to make films, we get to create something that, there's going to be one DVD or one cover of it somewhere on someone's shelf forever, and it's a privilege. So I agree with what Henk said. You're always going to want to do things better, but then take that you've learned and apply it to the next film. Don't be so hard on yourself, because we're all trying to figure this out, but it's an absolute privilege to do this.
I think that is a perfect place to finish. However, there is one more thing, and it's something we don't tell people about before the videos. You do get to take one more thing on this island with you, one each, just one, and it is simple. It is a luxury item, something that you think in your life that you can't live without. What would you take?
Is there electricity on the island?
Oh yeah, we've got ports, and you've got to plug your computers in.
I want to be practical. I want to say knife, just because I don't know if there's some food and I need to eat. So, and I don't know. I'll use probably a knife then. Especially when I go with Llewelynn, because we love each other, but 10 days hungry.
Maybe I should take a knife as well, so that it's Lord of the Flies kind of thing. No, but I think if Henk's taking a knife, that's very practical. Then I would. Yeah, that's a really good question, because you want to take something, like you said, there's electricity. Take something to keep yourself entertained or busy. But if he takes a knife, I'll just take a bigger knife. I'll take a machete. So Henk can kill the animals, and I'll clear the forest. So we'll just have two knives.
Yeah, sounds alright. Sounds good.
Practical, and they serve people, and they're still one of the most dangerous weapons. You still got to stand further away from a guy with a knife than a gun. So it's a very practical thing for a knife.
And if you're bored, you can just redo your Paul Hogan impressions over and over again.
For sure.
Exactly.
Gents, Henk, Llewelynn, thank you very, very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for your time as well, and doing the interview just by seeing the trailer. We'll send you the film, and we look forward to meeting you on set.
Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/GBHBL, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal, what else is life for?